Hello, my name is Cassandra Blanco. I am Roman Catholic and I welcome you to my podcast. Today's guest is my friend, Sister Thérèse Wong. Would you like to introduce yourself or say hello?
Hi. Hi, everyone. Good to see you.
So I'm going to read a short biography on her, and then we're going to jump into her story. So Sister Therese was raised in Columbus, Ohio, USA. She graduated from Franciscan University of Steubenville in 2011. Following graduating college, she served as a focus missionary for 2 years and then joined the Franciscan Sisters of the Renewal in 2013. In their ministry, the sisters serve Jesus in the poor and share the gospel through various works of evangelization. Sister Therese professed her final vows in 2023 and currently lives at the St. Clare Convent in Leeds, England. So thank you, my friend, for being my guest.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is great.
Yes, we go back a long time. So Sister Therese and I actually know each other from our time serving as focus missionaries together from 2011 to 2012 at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. So that is our history. So we are going to jump in and I will let Sister Therese introduce herself and just talk more about, if you want to start, where were you born? A little bit more maybe about your childhood, your siblings, all of that, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. So again, it's really a gift to be here with you all and with my good friend here, Cassandra. And so I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, actually, near the mountains. And then when I was about 6, we moved out to Ohio. So that's where I grew up, really was in Columbus, Ohio. And I have one older brother. And our family was very much a practicing Catholic. That was our faith as a family. And um, I have many memories of going to Sunday Mass and my mother also trying to get us to pray the rosary together as a family. So faith was always part of my life, and that's a gift I'm very grateful for. But it's interesting because looking back on my life, I can see how for years my faith was very compartmentalized. And what I mean by that is when I thought about God, it was something I did on Sunday. Religion was a Sunday thing and I enjoyed it, but it was just confined to Sunday and being at Mass, being at church. And because of that, as I, entered middle school and high school, I was in public school for a lot of that. I wanted to fit in and I wanted to be part of the cool group and have friends. And so I started to fall into the lies of the world, the pressures that my identity came from what I did and how I looked, what my grades were, how I could do in sports or whatever I was trying to accomplish for
Mm-hmm.
myself. And I kind of compare it to trying to run on the sand on the beach. It's very hard and it takes a lot of energy and it's exhausting. And that's how I felt, to be honest, a lot of the time when I was defining myself by those things that I was doing. But God broke in a very beautiful way when I was about 14. A good friend of mine for Lent one year decided to start praying and reading scripture every day. And she shared this with me, and I was so curious that I decided to try it too and to see what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge grace because looking back, I could see how God worked through her example. And I started to very intentionally open my heart to the Lord. So as I shared, I had been going to church and my whole life, but this was a turning point in the sense that as I started to pray and open my heart to God, I had an experience of God that I had never had before. And I realized Jesus is real, he's alive, and he very much wants to be part of my life, not just on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
So this relationship with him started to grow and to deepen. And I realized how beautiful this was and that God was so much bigger than I had realized. And as I started to grow in this friendship with him, the effects in my life were this peace and this joy and security that I had never found anywhere else, especially not in chasing after the things that the world said would fulfill me. So I began to experience that as a teenager, and that just deepened as the years went by. In high school, I definitely had my ups and downs like everyone else. I wasn't always strong in my practice of my faith. I had to learn how to integrate all of that together and how my faith was meant to influence my decisions. That was a learning process, definitely. And then I would say religious life first came into my mind when I was at university. So I graduated high school. I went to Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio. And for me, going there and experiencing that, there's this beautiful Catholic environment there. I can compare it to like a rich soil. For me, I just grew so much there as a person and as a Catholic, and experiencing the gift of really good friendships, Catholic community, people who were challenging me to grow in my prayer and my life in general, and just every aspect really of life. And so it was a beautiful time for me of growth and of maturing and just seeing more of what God wanted for me. So during my first year at Steubenville, I went on a retreat, and it was the whole focus of this retreat was about letting God love you, which is usually we think of what can we do? How can I love God, which is important. But this kind of turned it on its head, and it said, no, the focus is how can I let God love me? And it was a significant grace and very life-changing for me. And a few months after that retreat, I was at daily mass and had just received Jesus in the Eucharist, and had this sense in my heart that he was inviting me to be a religious sister, to be his bride. And at that point in time, religious life was very foreign to me, and it seemed a bit radical. And I remember saying to the Lord, I don't think I'd be happy doing that, and people would think I'm crazy. So no, thank you. And the Lord is just so patient and so gentle that over the next few years, he allowed me to just continue growing very slowly, gradually. And what I did during that time was I just tried to spend a lot of time in prayer and really asking the Lord, what do you want me to do? Even before that question, actually, just growing in love with him. And I think he really wanted that time for me, because it can be easy to think that my relationship with God and my vocation it's just all one thing, and I have to figure out my vocation before I can have this relationship with God. And that's not true at all. Vocation comes as a fruit of this relationship. So I was trying to kind of figure it out in my head for a while, and that didn't work. So the Lord wanted me to relax and he wanted me to just grow in this relationship with him. And as I did that, my heart slowly began to change without me even knowing it. So my third year in university, friends were going to go visit a convent, and they invited me to come. And my first response was, no, thank you. Again, I had fears and just different misconceptions about religious life. It just wasn't something that I was familiar with. So, but I went to the chapel and I asked the Lord, what do you think? What do you want me to do? And I really felt like I was supposed to go. And so I did. We went to visit this community of sisters. It wasn't my community, it was a different one. But that weekend for me was very significant, because for the first time, I was actually experiencing religious life in reality and not just in my head. And those are two very different things. And I saw just the witness of the sisters, that they were so authentic, and there was such a genuine joy that they had in living God's will for them. And I started to see the beauty of religious life for the first time. And despite myself, I was kind of like hesitant to see that, to be honest, but I saw it and I couldn't deny it. And it touched something very deep in my heart. So after that visit, I didn't quite know what to do with that experience, but I filed it away, and I finished university, and then I began to serve with Focus, and that's when you and I were teammates.
Yes, together.
that year in DC. And as you remember, you would just share different stories or experiences that you had had with the
Hmm.
CFRs, with the Franciscans of the Renewal, which is my community. We have sisters and also a brother community. And so as I would hear you kind of share these stories, the Holy Spirit really touched my heart. And I thought, I want to know more about these people. I didn't really know why, to be honest, but something was drawing me. And eventually I went to visit the sisters for the first time. And for me, when I was there, the best way to describe it is like a missing puzzle piece being put in, just this
Hmm.
sense of I'm meant to be here in some mysterious way. And I remember thinking that the deepest desires of my heart were like being shown to me on this visit. And I didn't expect that. But I just felt so close to Jesus. I was able to pray. And I noticed that the sisters and the brothers really lived as a family. Like we went to a community event with all of the brothers and sisters, and it was just this beautiful, joyful family.
Hmm.
And I really felt that, the beauty of it. And yeah, just the spirit of prayer and this poverty, this authenticity that I saw in them just very much um, attracted my heart. And
Hmm.
so after that first visit, I visited a few more times and then I ended up joining in 2013.
Hmm.
And it's just been a whole nother journey, a whole nother story since then.
Hmm.
But what I could say is that I'm just so grateful to God. What he did was he showed me that he knows me more than I know myself. That I had these ideas for my life, what I thought would make me happy. And in the end, it was something very different, something that I never expected. But it's been so beautiful, so much better than any of the dreams that I had for my own life. And it sounds cliche, but it's true. That's been my experience that the Father really does know. He
Hmm.
really knows what he's made me for. And so I'm experiencing just the gift of that now in my vocation.
Hmm. Beautiful. So, just to back up a little bit, I guess also to give some history, I stayed with the Franciscan Sisters of the Renewal a year after I graduated college for 8 days. And then I'd also met some Franciscan friars in Jacksonville when I lived there 1 year afterwards. So, that's how I learned more about the Franciscan friars. I think they also had a good relationship with the brothers, the Brotherhood of Hope at Florida State. So, I maybe had met them there, but I really got introduced to them when I got to Jacksonville. Beautiful community. Like you had said, I always saw that they were always very authentic and familial. That's definitely something I would say about the Franciscans is the Franciscan sisters and the Friars of the Renewal. They're very incredibly familial and joyful and a great love for the Eucharist and the poor. So it's a really beautiful community. So that's, I wanted to share that. But just back on your story, I know you are, well, this is going to be kind of random, but I just think it's unique about you. You're also half Chinese.
Yeah.
And is there, I just wanted to ask if that had any influence about your like upbringing in terms of culture or anything like that. So I wanted to ask that question. And then also about, I wanted to comment on how your journey of faith has been one of small steps over a gradual time. And then also your vocation story. It was not all at once, it was just a gradual change, gradual conversion, and then a gradual choice too to become a religious sister. So, in terms of that whole summary, maybe you can share as well about why you chose the Franciscans, Sisters of the Renewal, why that community, because there are many religious communities in the world, and then also about marriage. Like, was it hard for you
Mhm.
to decide that you were not going to be married and have children? That journey too, because that's also a decision to make that you're going to commit your life without marriage and without children. And has that been fulfilling for you? So, do you want to
Right,
answer those
right.
questions?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, interesting question about my ethnicity. Yeah, being half Chinese, I don't think I've ever thought about it, to be honest, and I
Oh,
don't think
okay.
it played a significant part, at
Yeah.
least consciously, in my discernment. I know we had great fried rice at dinner growing up, but yeah, I don't think it played a huge role
Mhm.
in my vocation specifically. But
Okay.
that's a yeah, a good thing to think about.
Yeah, no,
Um,
because I mean, my parents are from Puerto Rico, And I don't think we ever talked in depth about your Chinese background. My family had deep, my mom was straight from the island. My dad had grown up on U.S. military bases, but had also had deep roots to the island and had gone back when he was 15. So culture has played a deep role in my life. I knew you were half Chinese. We never really talked about it much because we mostly talked about faith, but I just was wondering. I was thinking, oh, yeah, that's right. She is also half Chinese. She's one of the few people actually that I know have Chinese heritage. I wonder if that played any role. So, anyways,
Yeah.
you can go ahead.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and then as far as, so you asked about marriage as well, and just,
Hmm.
yeah, just the overall journey. Definitely. I'm glad you asked that. For sure, when the call first came onto my heart about religious life, one of the big reasons why I was hesitant was because I wanted to get married. I had that desire in me. It's a good and a healthy desire, to want to be married. It's such a beautiful vocation from the Lord. And I remember just being very uncertain if I could be fulfilled without being married. That's a
Hmm.
very valid question that I had. And the way that I could explain it is, as I grew in my relationship with Jesus and received more and more of his love, um, I was able to look at reality in a wider way.
Hmm.
And so I began to look at marriage in a different way than I had before and see the beauty of it, which was important.
Hmm.
And to see, like, on a natural level, I do desire to be married and to have children and have a family.
Hmm.
But then the more time that I spent just with in prayer with the Lord, I could recognize this mysterious reality that even deeper than those desires to be married was to belong only to Jesus as his bride, as a
Hmm.
religious sister. And
Hmm.
it is mysterious.
Hmm.
Um it's a supernatural thing. So it didn't totally make sense to me, and it's still a mystery. But what I can say about how I've experienced that is, um, one of the vows we take is a vow of chastity, that we won't get married, and to live a celibate life for the Lord. And I've heard it described, the vow of chastity, as it's like an emptying. You let go of something very beautiful, which is marriage, and you trust and you believe that God will then come and fill that place in you. And I
Hmm.
have experienced that in very beautiful ways, ways that are beyond what I could have expected. And so, of course, there's a sacrifice in that, like, and I felt that when I made my decision, but there was a joy that outweighed it, and a sense of, this is a call coming from the Lord. This isn't something that I could just make up, because it doesn't
Hmm.
make sense. But if it's really from the Lord, the grace is there, and my desires were changed.
Hmm.
Not that I didn't desire marriage at all, but it's like I was saying, on a deeper level, I could see God's made my heart to love in a different way.
Hmm.
Um, he wants me to give my heart just to him in this particular way. And this is the path of holiness for me. And it's different for each person, it's different for each vocation. But yeah, just experiencing how God, ultimately, no matter what our vocation is, God alone can fulfill our hearts.
Hmm.
Um, and just reflecting on that as a religious, and it's very humbling to me, but he's inviting me to live part of heaven now. That in heaven, God is all in all for everyone. And so, called to live part of that now in a mysterious way.
Hmm.
It won't make complete sense until heaven, but um, yeah, those are some thoughts. Is that everything?
Yeah, it sounds great. You find it very deeply fulfilling. It's not
Yeah,
something that you feel like, oh, I just wish I could be married. I'm not saying that the longing or that desire is ever absent. That's not what I'm saying. But you find that the life that you have chosen as a religious sister is very fulfilling for you. So that's, yeah, beautiful. All right. So why don't we go into your life as just as a religious? Anything you want to share about that time in religious life? You've now been in 13 years. So do you want to share about any ups, downs, and a reflection of what it's been like for you?
yeah. I think just looking at the journey as a whole, when I first entered religious life, and I'm assuming it's like this in marriage as well. I definitely had this idealized idea of what it would be like, a very rosy idea of religious life, that I would just float down the hallway all the time and it would be wonderful all the time. And that's not reality for anyone and in any vocation.
Hmm.
And that's part of, um, I'll speak for myself, that was part of my process of growing and maturing in my vocation that I entered. And then it was this experience of, part of you let go of a lot of things that are part of most people's lives. Like, I don't have a cell phone anymore.
Hmm.
I don't have my own car. I don't, you let go of a lot of independence in that sense, but it's meant not because those things are bad, but it's meant to, I'm just called to live a life of greater simplicity. That's just what the Lord's asked me to do. And it's been very beautiful to see that there's a purpose behind those things, and because of those things being removed from my life, I started to see reality in a different way, if that makes sense, and
Hmm.
my own weaknesses in a much different way, which
Hmm.
happens in marriage as well. But I came face to face with my own imperfections, basically, in community life and in the convent, and that was hard. It was very difficult, purifying, but so good.
Hmm.
And it's helped me to grow as a person, and um, that's one of the gifts of community life or family life, that it's kind of like a mirror, and you see yourself reflected back,
Hmm.
um, the good, the bad, everything,
Hmm.
and the experience of being loved in the midst of those things too.
Hmm.
So that's been a huge gift, and yeah, just having the courage to look at reality, look at myself in a very, as authentically as I can with the
Hmm.
Lord. But so anyway, with just that experience of, okay, this is real, this is life, and it's a good thing to be challenged and to grow. And that's been
Hmm.
a big theme for me over these years. And yeah, and then I think I wanted to mention too, just spiritual motherhood, that idea. Not everyone is familiar with that idea, but that, of course, as a sister, I've given up having my own physical children, but a big part of my vocation as a sister is to be a spiritual mother to souls. And I have experienced that, and it's the Lord's deepened that in me as I've lived and grown, and He'll continue to do that. But that's been a real fulfillment for me as well, just um, to do my best to have this open heart to whoever comes to the door, whoever I may be giving a talk to, whoever the Lord brings across my path, that
Hmm.
He wants me to try to help lead that person closer to Him. And in that way, I can be the spiritual mother to them. So that's been a real gift.
Hmm. Beautiful. So, in terms of religious life, I just want to say a reflection about that is when you join religious life, it might be at the spiritual level, it's a call, but at the human level, you're going to be living in a convent, which is where sisters live together with humans. So, depending as well on the health of the people, emotional health of the people that you live with, is also going to affect how a person experiences their own religious experience. So I just wanted to share that because it's the same, would be the same exact thing in marriage. Is yes, it's a call. For some people it's very deep. For some people it's just a natural step in life. But for those that take it at a very deep level, that call will still manifest itself in the fact that you are living with another human being, all their brokenness, all their struggles, all their defects, and then how that manifests itself in that vocation. So just wanted to share that. All right. And so another question would be, how did your family receive becoming a religious sister? Not everyone's family is receptive or supportive of the choice for somebody to become a priest or a religious sister or religious brother. So do you want to share just about your own experience with that?
Yeah, sure. I was very blessed because both of my parents were very supportive, and I can still remember the conversations that I had with each of them individually, and I was nervous because that was one of my questions in my own heart as I was discerning, like, what is my family going to think? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my parents are both Catholic, but this was a radical step, and I hadn't talked about it with them before. It wasn't like a thing we discussed in my house, so I yeah, for me, it was a leap of faith to bring it up with them, but very grateful. They both were very supportive. And I remember my mom saying to me once, she's like, honey, I want you to do God's will. So if this is what he wants, then that's beautiful. So it's a lot of grace. It's a lot of grace there.
It's beautiful.
There were other family members who had a harder time with it, and it's been amazing to watch their journey with that too. Because I had to realize as well, I'm making this decision, but my family has to deal with the effects of that, like they're being brought along on this journey, not by choice. It's my decision and they're being brought along. But just to see how over the years, they've been able to meet different members of the community and coming to my vows and things like that has helped them to see the beauty of it and to see how happy I am. So there have been a lot of conversations and just growth there that's been very good. So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. And then just lastly, before we're going to get into some questions too, just specifically about religious life, for you to explain more about that and being a religious sister, but about your own personal journey. You didn't elaborate much, but why did you choose the Franciscan Sisters instead of a different community? And maybe you can share what that even means. Like every community has a charism. What is that? And what does that mean? Why Franciscans for you, not anybody else?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, there are so many communities, hundreds, thousands, I'm sure, around the world, different spirituality, and like you said, the word charism, and that's charism is a gift given by God to the founder of a community. Like Saint Francis of Assisi, for example, he's the founder of the Franciscan order, which I'm part of. And God gave him a charism, this special gift of seeing Jesus in the poor and of just trying to love him there. And that charism is meant to bless the whole world, the whole church, the whole world. And so each community has their own kind of distinct charism. So when I visited our community, I wasn't specifically looking for Franciscan charism. I didn't even know what that was. But some people do. Some people are drawn specifically to serving the poor or, right away. But for me, that wasn't even on my radar. I just noticed when I was with our sisters, I felt so close to the Lord and I was so drawn to the simplicity of their life. And I just felt so much peace about living that way, even though I could see the challenge, it's not easy, but I could see the beauty of it. And there was something deep in me that just thought, I'm made to live that way. So it corresponded with something that was already in my heart. That's how I decided. It was very much, just trying to listen to what God was doing within me when I was visiting and then responding to that. I heard it explained one time, this was really beautiful, that so in religious life, with the vows, poverty, chastity, obedience, those three vows, the whole purpose of them is that's the way that Jesus lived. And the vows are meant to make the life of Jesus visible in the world now in an imperfect way, but we're doing our best. And so that's one thing I think is beautiful about the vows and why we take them. But with that as well, that Jesus is so rich and deep and beautiful that one community, one charism can't capture him fully. He's God, he's infinite. So there's so many different types of religious communities because God is just so big and beautiful that each one reflects a different tiny aspect of who he is. So I just really love that explanation.
Yeah, okay. So why don't we focus now on specific questions about religious life, religious sisters, and even can you explain more about the Franciscans? Generally, what are they known for? And maybe we can compare the Franciscans to let's say, the Sisters of Life, which is another very popular community within America, at least. So do you just so we have like a comparison. What are the differences between communities?
Yeah.
Does that sound good? All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, great question. With Franciscans in particular, like with our community, it's a call to really serve Jesus in the poor and also evangelize. And essentially, St. Francis was trying to just live the gospel, which is not easy. And that could mean different things, but that's what his heart wanted. He wanted to just follow Jesus, live the gospel very simply. So as part of a Franciscan community, that's what we try to do. We try to do hands-on work with the poor, soup kitchens, food pantries, going to visit people in their homes. They can come to the door. We'll pray with them. We'll give them a bag of food. So we try to make it very personal, very simple, one-on-one, loving the person in front of us as best we can. So that's very Franciscan, to serve the poor, and then also to preach the gospel, to evangelize, to share faith with others. So those are kind of the two main ministries that we do as a community. But yeah, definitely, I would say Franciscans are known for striving to see Jesus in the poor. And Mother Teresa would talk about the distressing disguise of the poor. It's not easy, but it's learning how to recognize, okay, Jesus, you're in this person. You've said it. He said it in the Gospels that whatever you do to the least of these, you're doing to me. So it's we're attempting to respond to that and to love him right there. And Franciscans are also known for their poverty. So just trying to live very simple lives. We try to limit our use of technology, not because it's bad, but just because we're called to live this way. And yeah, so we don't have our own stuff, and yeah, we share a lot of things in common. And
And then do you have any thoughts on how that compares to maybe the Sisters of Life?
yeah, I mean, I don't know a ton about them, but for what I know, so their ministry is very focused on the dignity of the human person, on enhancing, I think they say enhancing and protecting human life. Beautiful. So it's, of course, it's all related. It's all part of the gospel, but again, they're called to live a slightly different focus as religious women, and to serve pregnant mothers, women who are in vulnerable situations, and to love Jesus in them. So again, it's like another aspect of God, of his heart. He's so vast. And the way that they live poverty would look different than ours, but they also take a vow of poverty. So that's kind of interesting to know as well, that a lot of religious communities take the three vows, the three most common: poverty, chastity, and obedience. The Sisters of Life actually take a fourth vow to protect human life, which is amazing. So those are kind of like the bedrock of religious life, but they're lived out in different, it looks different for each community how they live that out.
Yep. Beautiful. All right. So let's get into more questions about religious life specifically that are kind of general that people would have questions about. So let's start with, what is the veil? Why do you wear it? So you got that nice black veil. I wonder how heavy it is too. I've never asked that. Oh, it did. Oh, that's good.
Can blow in the wind.
Yes, it's long too. Do you want to like hold it out? Yeah, your veil is very long.
Very long.
Yeah.
Very long.
Yeah, it's a very long veil. So why do you wear a veil? And do you choose it? Is it forced on you? And then also, why do you wear a habit? And why do all the sisters look like they have a uniform on?
Great question. Okay, so
I'm thinking like somebody that would be thinking like this. Like, why are you guys all like in unison, you know? And
yeah.
you also have a rosary that you carry on. So maybe just explain, what's the habit? How did it come about? Why do you wear it? All of that.
Yeah, that's great. I love talking about this. So yes, I'm wearing a veil, and I love wearing this veil. And the reason why is because brides wear veils. And that's why I'm wearing it. It's meant to show that I'm a bride of Christ. And so it reminds me of who I am, but it's meant to be a visible sign, as well as my habit. Same thing. It's meant to be an outward sign. Two things come to mind. First, that I'm set apart, that I'm consecrated for God. And the second reality is that I also in some way belong to everyone. And let me explain that. Mother Teresa had a quote about this. She said, "My heart belongs to Jesus alone, but my calling is to belong to the whole world." And again, this dynamic of I wear this all the time wherever I go, because my identity doesn't change. I am always a bride of Jesus, and I need to remember that, and I want to share that with others. And so I don't go home after a long day and change into something else. I always wear this to always be visible in that way. And it's amazing and very humbling how often people will come up to me, people I don't know, on the street and ask for prayers. And they somehow just know that I'm there for them. And there's like this trust that they have because I'm a sister. So it's very humbling, very beautiful to me, to be available to them in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a huge reason why we have the habit, again, to be a public witness of Jesus um, and to remember who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. And then why specifically for you all do you wear a black veil? Is there a reason?
good question. Yeah, so when sisters are in formation, when they're novices, so like before they've taken their first vows, their veil is actually white. It's just meant to show that they haven't taken their vows yet.
Mm-hmm.
Our veil are the reason that I know of for it being black, it sounds a bit solemn, but it's meant to, black is often associated with dying, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's meant to be, again, a reminder of this call that we have to die to ourselves and to live for God and to live for others. So that's the meaning of the black, and then another meaning is that it means that I've taken my vows. In
Yeah.
our community, that's what it means. So
Right. It's a public sign that you're a vowed lady.
yes.
All right. Probably most people don't talk to sisters like this, but this is my dearest friend, so I can. All right. So, why? Okay, we did talk about celibacy, but can you elaborate more about the vows, like chastity, obedience, and poverty, chastity, and obedience? What does that mean, and
Yeah.
how does that manifest?
Yep. So as I was mentioning before, it's the deepest reason for the vows is that it's the way that Jesus himself lived on earth, which I find very beautiful. And poverty, so the vow of poverty, it's again that looks different in each community, how that's actually lived out. For us, like I don't have my own bank account, I don't have my own credit cards, I don't earn a salary. We as Franciscans live completely on what we call God's providence. So the food that we eat, the cars that we drive, um, everything that we have has been given to us from other people. And it's amazing to see how God provides for us, and also just the generosity of people. I've heard this idea of God's providence described compared to a parachute that you have to jump to let it work. So that's kind of the experience of yeah, I've never gone hungry. God always provides what we need. And it's really exciting actually to let him be a father in that way. Poverty. So, and then like the spiritual level of poverty, to each of the vows, there's many different levels. The spiritual level of poverty is that what I'm striving to do, and this takes a lifetime, but I'm striving to live in such a way that I'm not grasping onto something, to anything except God. And again, this takes a lifetime, but it's, for example, striving to not grasp after attention from others or after being successful in ministry or whatever. There could be 1,000 different temptations there,
Hmm.
but to really think, no, Jesus, I want you to be my treasure. I want you to be the one that I'm seeking after, not anything else. So that's poverty, chastity, like we touched on a little bit. This invitation from God that my heart, it's often referred to as an undivided heart, but just
Hmm.
this idea of being invited to just give my whole self only to God in that way, as a bride, as a spouse.
Hmm.
And it is that way. I've experienced him loving me in that way, and fulfilling my heart beyond expectation. And the spiritual motherhood aspect of that as well that I mentioned. Um, and then obedience, not easy, but really,
Mm.
again, trying to imitate Jesus. That when you look at how Jesus lived his life, he himself said, I do nothing on my own. I do what the Father does. He
Hmm.
was always looking at the other, and he was God. So just this amazing humility that Jesus showed to us, the beauty of, and it's freely chosen. I think that's important to mention with obedience. It's not this unhealthy, I'm being controlled, I don't think for myself, that's not what it is at all. That's actually a very unhealthy way to live obedience. It's meant to be a mature gift of self and a mature, I'm freely laying down my life. Jesus said that no one takes my life from me, I lay it down freely. So as religious, we're trying to ultimately obey God. All Christians are called to obey the Lord, but also to obey the human superior that God places over me in my religious community. For example, where I'm going to live. I didn't just decide that I wanted to come live in England. My superior, one day we went on a walk and she said, "What do you think about going to England?" And we had a conversation about it. So it's very human and very beautiful the way that it happens. But there's a sense of when I made my vow of obedience, I'm promising, yeah, I have thoughts, I have desires, and I can share those, and it's good to do that. But ultimately, I'm going to leave the decision in God's hands through my human superior and believe that God's working there and that he's going to bless that. So it's really exciting. It's not easy, but it's an adventure. You just never know what God's going to ask next. And yeah, just very beautiful. So.
Oh, beautiful. You obviously love being a sister. That's
I
great.
do.
All right. So what about, can you talk about the difference between cloistered nuns and sisters? And from what I understand, nuns are actually cloistered, sisters are actually in the world. So if that's correct, if not, you can correct me. But do you want to just share the difference and why do sisters decide to, or nuns, excuse me, decide to like go away from the world like that? Because some people would view that as a waste, like why aren't they contributing to society and stuff like that? So can you share about that as well?
I'd love to, yeah. So you are correct that technically a nun, a nun is a religious woman who's cloistered, meaning that she lives a very hidden life within the convent. Often they don't leave unless it's for like a doctor's appointment or something very serious. And like you said, to some people that seems crazy. It seems confining. Why would someone do that? What if they're really gifted? And I love talking about this. There's just so much to say here, but I've heard it compared to someone called to be a cloistered nun. I've heard it compared to Jesus in the Eucharist, actually. That Jesus, as we believe, who is truly present, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist and the Catholic Church, he is God, and yet he's chosen to hide himself in this piece of bread inside of a tabernacle in every Catholic church, and he's there waiting for us. And so cloistered sisters in some sense are called to that, like this hidden life of prayer and sacrifice and this intimacy with God, and they really view themselves as they're intercessors. They're praying for all of us. It's probably why the world's still turning right now. The prayers of cloistered sisters. I really think that it's very powerful, their prayers. But it's very mysterious as well. It's just this life of hiddenness. And but like my calling to be a religious sister means that I live in a convent with other sisters, but we go out quite a bit, and we're working among other people. We go out and do ministry. We help with retreats. We're very visible in the world. So it's a different calling. The interior reality hopefully is the same, that we're both anchored in the Lord. And that's where any kind of ministry activity that sisters are doing should be coming from that place of intimacy with the Lord. Otherwise, it's fruitless. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Did you want to say anything else about it?
I can't remember did you ask another question with that?
Oh, no, just about, the differences between a religious sister and a nun. Why would they go into like a hidden life? I guess because when we talk about the spiritual world, if somebody is not familiar with the spiritual world, some of these things do sound kind of crazy. But for those who have had a deep encounter with God and journey towards a relationship with Christ in a deep way, they can make these decisions to commit their lives to the Lord. And I will say, just having worked both in the corporate world and in the church and ministry, I find that people who have committed their life to religious life, some of the most beautiful people in the world, truly, because they're living to the highest ideal standards and what Jesus is calling, us too as Christians. It's like many religious, not all. There are religious, there are priests who make mistakes and who choose bad things, but many that I do know personally are some of the most beautiful people in the world. So,
Can I add one other thought?
yeah, absolutely.
So just when you were asking, like, is it a waste for someone to be a religious or especially cloistered? Just one other thought that I had was, if we think of it in terms of love, if someone falls in love, they will do crazy things, they'll do anything for the one that they love, and it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And that's what I see in this, especially in particular with a cloistered sister, that to the world it might seem like a waste. She has all these gifts. She could have been this, she could have done that, and that's true. But she is, what a beautiful offering to the Lord that she's giving to him, that she's saying, I have all these things, but I'd prefer you. I prefer to give my life to you in this hidden way, because that's what you are asking, and I love you. So that's really the motivation. And that passage in the gospel where the woman breaks the jar and pours this perfume over the feet of Jesus, and the apostles, some of them are saying, this is a waste. What is she doing? You could have done a lot of other things with that money. And Jesus just says, no, this is a beautiful thing that she's done. So,
right.
Yeah.
Beautiful offering. All right. 2 more questions. The first is, what is contact like with your family? Because as a religious, you don't have, like, as a layperson, I could talk to whoever I want. I could do whatever I want. I have total freedom in that sense, because I have not joined a religious community and chosen obedience and all of that. So I do know, like, for example, the Missionaries of Charity, that's Mother Teresa's community, at least a few years ago, or whenever the last I heard about them, they could only see their family once every 10 years. So it would just be nice, that's definitely a question people ask. Can I talk to my family? Can I call them whenever I want? All of that. So can you, and your friends too, what is contact like?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, our community, we go home every year for 2 weeks to see our family. So that's a great gift. And it's amazing to see how that might sound like a short time, and in a sense it is. I'm not there all year, but when I am there, I've experienced this many times, that God really blesses it. It's like the time that I have is enhanced, if you will. And I value it so much more. It's just so precious to me now. So that's part of it. And then we do phone calls sometimes. I'll call my parents a few times a month and check in on them and see how they're doing. And same with my brother. And then friends, occasionally on the phone, not super often with us, but we'll write letters to friends is more common. But yeah, so just to see how, again, there is a letting go there. That's not easy, especially at first. In the first few years, I felt that very keenly, the sacrifice of that. But to see how whenever we give God anything, he gives it back. He really does. And I've experienced that. Of course, the relationship might look different. Like you were saying, I don't just pick up the phone whenever I feel like it and call my friends or my family, but the relationships have deepened. They look different, but they're deeper. And there's this mutual understanding where we're trying to do God's will, and that looks different for each of us. But there's a very beautiful, we're still united very deeply. So.
Yes, Sister Therese and I have written letters over many years. We have lots of letter writing going on. Yeah, it's great. All right. And the last question is, what does your daily schedule look like? Can you give like a day in the life of, that's popular on YouTube, by the way, but a day in the life of Sister Therese, or a Franciscan sister?
Yeah. So basically throughout the day, we pray the Liturgy of the Hours. So if someone's not familiar with that, it's basically a collection of the Psalms that's broken up over a 4-week cycle. And so we come together in our chapel 5 times a day to pray from that book. And we also do a daily Mass and a daily Eucharistic Holy Hour. So this time of prayer, kind of in the morning and in the evening before dinner. And I mentioned prayer first because that's the thing in our life that doesn't change.
Hmm.
Everything else can drastically change and vary according to the day or the week or even the month of the year that we're in. But the prayer schedule, our life of prayer is really the core of our whole vocation. And
Hmm.
it's the reason why we're here. And it's Jesus is he's the foundation for everything else. So that's the number one priority is prayer.
Hmm.
Um, and then in between those times of prayer, we do our ministry, our different works, and that can vary. Like I was saying, we do a lot of school visits, we run retreat days,
Hmm.
we'll help with parish missions, we'll go on mission trips, we'll serve the poor, we'll do home visits. So any of those things could happen in any particular day.
Hmm.
And then also we really value our meal times in our community. Again, like this family spirit. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner on normal days, we eat together, we talk. It's like a family. We share what's happened that day. We laugh a lot. It's very joyful, very real. So I really love those times when we can just come together because our ministry can be intense at times. So it's a gift to have I can go to the table and my sisters are there and it's very life-giving. So that's very important to us as well, our time
Hmm.
together as sisters. And then here and there, we take turns cooking, take turns cleaning and different chores like anyone else would have around the house. And then in between the times, if you're lucky on a day, you might have time to go on a walk or like on a more quiet, like on a Sunday, play guitar, read.
Hmm.
Some sisters like to paint. So there's room for different hobbies and whatever is life-giving. And it's important as humans to try to live a balanced life. So
Hmm.
we are very busy, but we do try to live a balanced life as much as we can.
Hmm. Oh, that's great. If you could offer advice to a young woman or even a man who is discerning their vocation, any thoughts you want to add about that? What advice would you give?
Yeah, two things come to mind. The first is Our Lady. I have to mention her. When I was in my discernment, in the throes of discernment, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I remember thinking, I'm going to ruin my life. I'm going to miss it. I didn't know what I was doing. And
Hmm.
what I decided every day that I would pray a simple prayer to Mary and ask her to guide me into my vocation. And
Hmm.
that's one of the best things I ever did because I know that she played a huge part in getting me where I'm supposed to be and
Hmm.
in God's will. So she just wants to help us. So I would really recommend asking Our Lady on a consistent every day for help. And then the other thing that came to mind is I know this is so cliche, everyone says this, but really that God is trustworthy. It's worth it. It's worth it. For a long time, my hang up with this whole thing was trust. I wasn't sure. I didn't know if I'd be happy. I didn't know if I could let go of my own plans, my own ideas. But ultimately, when I finally let go, there was this tremendous peace and this gift was given to me and I could
Hmm.
receive it. So just to believe that God has such a good plan and it might not be what you think it is, but
Hmm.
it's honestly you will never regret following God's will and he's a good father and he knows us more than we know ourselves.
Hmm. Beautiful. All right, my friend, is there anything else you want to share that we didn't cover? Anything you want to share too about your community, about religious life, about Jesus?
Oh, there's so much I could say,
I
but
know.
I
Any,
don't, we
anything you
have,
want
I
to
don't know.
end with?
I think just, I'm just grateful. I just have such gratitude to God for the gift of my vocation and, um, yeah, and just to encourage anyone, in your discernment, just, yeah, to be open to whatever God wants. And
Hmm.
yeah, God is just so good. I just
Hmm.
love my vocation. So,
Hmm. Yeah, and actually, I didn't ask this question, but you're actually in the UK, which you're not from. So,
right.
can you just share? I don't know why I didn't even think about that, but can you just share? That's my last question. What's it been like? You're, technically a missionary. You're in a different country sharing your faith. So let's just end with that. Anything you want to share about that experience of being away from home, being a missionary, all of that.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so. I first came to live here in the UK in 2017. I lived here for a little bit, went back to America. Now I'm back. So it's my second time living here. And I had never even been to England before I moved here the first time. So it was very unknown to me, unfamiliar. Even though it's the same language, it's very different. Different words are often used. And so it was an adjustment. It was a culture shock to come here. But I do love it, honestly. And for me, what I've experienced is, people say, well, God will give the grace. It's true. It really is true
Mm-hmm.
that I do experience this calling to be a missionary here, that I'm supposed to be here. And um, the culture is very different, but I have come to love it. And I'm always learning, and I'm still who I am. I'm still an American.
Mm-hmm.
You like, I retain who I am, but it's learning how to love and serve the people in this context, wherever that might happen to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned a lot from them as well. But like, how can I bring Jesus here? And so, yeah, it's very beautiful. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cold there too, huh?
It's cold.
Yeah.
Lots of sheep,
Lots of
lots of
sheep,
tea.
lots of tea. Funny, any differences? Like, can you just maybe share the last, like cultural differences that you notice that are different? Or words?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, a funny one. So like instead of saying the sidewalk, they say pavement. So we're walking on the pavement. For a semi truck is called a lorry, Lorry. Something else I learned when I first moved here, someone said, would you like a drink? And in my mind, I thought, yeah, I'd like some water. So I said yes, expecting them to then ask what I would like to drink. But they turned and walked away and brought me a cup of tea. So
Oh,
saying yes to a drink here mostly
it's
means
tea.
tea or coffee. So
Wow.
it is a beautiful part of the culture, though, that I love, that there's this emphasis on talking, on like stopping and having a cup of tea and being present to the person in
Mm-hmm.
front of you. And I think as an American, we can learn from that.
Mm-hmm.
Learning how to slow down a little bit. So that is something very beautiful about the culture here.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. All right, ma'am. Can you share just if somebody wants to find more about your community, where would they go? The website?
Yep. So our website it's Franciscan Sisters CFR.com. And we are trying to get more up there. There's photos. We have a blog now that we're updating, and maybe more things to come. So that would be the best place to go.
And then are there discernment retreats or something? Like if somebody was thinking about becoming a sister, are there events on there that show that there's a discernment retreat? Or if somebody wanted to make a visit, do they just call? How does that work?
Yeah, for it's different for each community. For us, the best step would be to call the vocation director, the sister who's in charge of vocations, which is all on the website there. But we try to post different events that we're leading or going to, so that could be something to look at as well.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you, my friend, for being my guest. I am very grateful. And to my
Thank you.
audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment and I will do my best to respond. I hope you have a great morning, day, or night wherever you are in the world, and God bless you. Bye bye.
Bye.